This show is brought to you in part by viewers like you who joined a Patreon or become YouTube members. Thank you. And if you could, hit the like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content.
What's up, and welcome to Hot Takes, the show where I react to the hot takes that you guys have in the comments section. Again, making an effort to put less hot takes in here so I have more time to kind of break down and really discuss every hot take, whether I agree or disagree with it, to kind of change up the format from the Q&A one. So that's going to be a change that's happening. I'm going to try to figure out what other adjustments I can make to this series to make it different. And if you have any adjustments that you would like to suggest, drop them in the comment section down below. But this hot take comes from Dragon the Abandoner. It sounds like a character from a RPG. And Dragon says this: "Hey Q, you may not want to talk about this, but can we discuss Mary Kay and all the stuff she is saying? She has said the Browns drafted Sanders because they feel bad for him. She has said he's an old dog that needs to learn new tricks, and made false statements about Shador only working with Pat Shurmur and how other QBs have, including Dylan Gabriel, more experience working in different systems, and that learning new terminology is going to be hard for Shador. We all know that's not true, that Sanders had multiple coordinators in his time at Jackson State and Colorado. She clearly has an issue with Sanders. This isn't real reporting at all." All right, so I'm going to try to be careful here because, I'll be honest with you. I am not somebody who is on the Mary Kay text line. Even though I appear on the Cleveland.com show, which I am scheduled to appear on this Thursday, I do not have a Cleveland.com subscription, and I'm not someone who is going to read a ton of what Mary Kay's putting out, right? I am someone who gets my information from my own things, and I'm not really reliant on the job that Mary Kay is doing. So I don't know what Mary Kay has been writing. I have not been paying very much attention to what Mary Kay has been writing. So I don't want to just, no disrespect, Dragon, I don't want to just straight up take everything you're saying as fact, right? Like, I want to be able to read it and look into it. But if I were to respond to this and take you for your word, right, I don't know why Mary Kay is framing this in the way that she is framing this. The old dog that needs to learn new tricks quote, that needs more context for me, because that's a crazy thing to call a 22 or 23-year-old in Shador Sanders. So I don't know if that's the case. I think the mix-up with her saying that Shador hasn't worked with different offensive coordinators, maybe what she meant was offensive systems, because, yes, Shador did change offensive coordinators going from Jackson State to Colorado. And, yes, that did include, adjustments like terminology. This system was more in line with what Shador has always run, right, because the head coach is still the same. That being said, I don't know how much that really matters, right? Like, what, are we going to make a decision on what we care about when it comes to these quarterbacks in the transfer portal era? Because some guys transfer around a lot, and we say that's a bad sign. They couldn't stick anywhere, right? Other guys transfer around a lot, and we say, oh, my goodness, that's good. That means they know how to learn a bunch of different offenses. I don't think it's really a factor either way, how many offenses you can learn. These guys should be able to learn new offenses. Learning a new offense is not something that is on the scale of things that you have to do in the NFL. That's not one of the more difficult things. Like, everybody should be capable of learning a new offense over the period of time that you have in your rookie year. That shouldn't be that difficult. I feel like we overrate how difficult it is. Like, understanding that there are some issues and everything else and things that pop up in terminology that can be a bit of an issue, right? Not saying it's never a problem, but the ideal of learning a new offense, it's not that crazy. A lot of guys have learned new offenses before in a short amount of time at the quarterback position. So I don't really even know why that is such a big point of contention in her reporting on Shador. I will say this, and I'm trying to be very careful here because, again, I have not read the Mary Kay stuff, and I want to be transparent about this, right? So there might be a side to this that I'm not aware of. But it might be Mary Kay's way of trying to make the story more interesting. There is a pattern in a lot of the ways that Mary Kay likes to paint stories, especially at the quarterback position. She seems to like a underdog story, and sometimes that requires, in her mind, that she paint as brim of a picture at the beginning for a quarterback and then brighten that picture as it goes on, right? This is something that she attempted with Deshaun Watson, and she's still attempting with Deshaun Watson. On one end, Mary Kay is a beat reporter, and her writing is not supposed to be based on like creating narratives, but also Mary Kay is kind of old school, right? A lot of old school reporters try to build in a narrative to the facts that they are also reporting to make the story catch on to the public and be something they can latch themselves onto, right? Like, that's kind of like a role that Mary Kay kind of takes upon herself to kind of author some of these narratives about players in a positive or negative way. That all being said, the beautiful thing about all of this is if you do not love how Mary Kay is portraying this situation, you don't have to really interact with her analysis of it. Like, I cover the Browns, and I think I do a decent job of it. I don't really read a ton of Mary Kay. I don't have the Mary Kay tweet alerts up. You don't have to follow Mary Kay and keep up with everything that she's doing in order to know what's going on with the Cleveland Browns. There are a lot of other accounts that will get information to you, right? Accounts like the guys at the OBR, accounts like my guy Jared Mueller, right? Accounts like, there's a lot of folk out here who do a good job covering the Cleveland Browns, Fred Greetham, right? That get information out and maybe in a more straightforward way that you prefer. But yeah, that's my thing, right? I'm not a big fan of how Mary Kay tries to like manufacture narratives in order to kind of make the story of the season a little bit more enticing, depending on what she thinks is going to go down. And that's why I don't really get too involved with her week to week stuff, right? Like when she's breaking a story, that's a little different. Mary Kay does have solid sourcing when it comes to breaking a story, but when it's just like her writing these opinion articles that are kind of like wrapped around some of the stuff she's hearing, it can be twisted and turned like a Twizzler, right? And like some taffy. And that's because she's trying to make a product, not necessarily trying to give you a direct read of everything going on there, right? She's writing, what she believes to be kind of somewhat art too, so that's kind of like where I'm at, because I don't dislike Mary Kay. I think Mary Kay is okay with a lot of stuff that she does. It's just you got to know what you're getting from somebody, right? Because if you going into somebody's work and you don't really know what you're getting, and you think you're going to get one thing and they provide what they've always provided, you're going to be pretty upset with them, right? So my best advice is, if how she's portraying this thing is bothering you, there are plenty of other people to get your information from that are at the source of it too, right? Like she's not the only beat reporter at camp. Camp Justice, somebody I have on the show regularly. I think she does a great job of giving you information on top of how she feels about it. Dan Lab and Ashley Bastock, I think, do great jobs there too. Like, you know, there's more even at that website, even in that newspaper, there are other options to go to that I think offer a different style of perspective if that's what you're looking for. So that's what I always recommend. I don't love spending my energy being angry about what other people are doing. I try to find the people who are doing stuff that I admire, respect, and appreciate, and spend my energy supporting those people, right? So, you know, I'm not going to go out here and make a million videos about what I don't like about how some people are doing their jobs. I would just rather put that energy into how I like doing my job. So that's why, you know, if I'm trying to be careful here, I'm trying to avoid, you know, doing that with critiquing Mary Kay's work. And, you know, it's kind of been my focus lately. Lovely says, thoughts on the Browns reportedly trying to get with Chris Olave, or get Chris Olave in a trade, not get with him. That's crazy. All right. I like it. The Browns seem to have certain tendencies, right, and patterns that have worked out for them. One of these patterns that have worked out for them is taking a chance on a draft pick who's not completely off, but hasn't really had the kind of breakout season, and seeing if a different situation, one that they feel like fits that player better, can be enough to coax a breakout season to him. It is the formula that they use for Amari Cooper. It's a formula that they use for Jerry Jeudy, right? 3 seasons, back-to-back-to-back years, the Cleveland Browns have gotten career seasons out of these wide receivers, right? So, yeah, it makes sense they were going after Chris Olave. Again, a young player. It makes sense that the Browns trade for a young player, given that their window is a bit undetermined right now. Yeah, the Browns are, look, just because the Browns aren't in an aggressive win now, try to win a Super Bowl window, does not mean that the Browns won't be aggressive when it comes to long-term ways to improve the roster, and getting Chris Olave would be a long-term way to improve the roster. They're going to think long-term. They're not going to do a lot of short-term stuff, and they're not going to spend a lot of capital on short-term stuff. But when it comes to long-term fixes, the Browns will always be open to something that can give them a serious long-term benefit versus a short-term bump in energy, right? That's how the Browns operate. I appreciate that about how the Browns operate, and I'm hopeful that that's gonna bear a lot of fruit for this team when it comes to getting a better result from them on the football field. Cleveland CBI says this: Trevor Lawrence is the most overrated quarterback in the last decade. The NFL wanted him to be a Manning so bad. He's not. He'll never be. I am not a Trevor Lawrence guy, right? I have always been skeptical about if Trevor Lawrence was really as good as people swore that Trevor Lawrence is. And that's not to say that Trevor Lawrence does not have some magnificent qualities about him, right? He has some great traits. He's a big guy. You know, I think Trevor Lawrence has not been, how do I say this? I think the NFL has wasted a lot of Trevor Lawrence's potential because they have miscast him. I think if somebody gets Trevor Lawrence and thinks to themselves, I'm going to do everything Cam Newton used to do with Trevor Lawrence, then there's a chance that Trevor is able to play so good that it doesn't matter about some of the mediocrity that surrounded him in Jacksonville, right? He's able to elevate that mediocrity. But I think the time has passed to utilize him in that way. And I think still, even to this day, people don't feel like utilizing Trevor Lawrence in that way. And people insist on this idea that Trevor is going to be Andrew Luck or, a Manning brother, right? Like he's going to be one of those type players. And that's just simply not how Trevor Lawrence has been good at football. He's always been, in my opinion, a inconsistent passer at the football. Is he capable of some magnificent stuff? Yes. Is he capable of some questionable stuff? Yes. Trevor Lawrence every year has hot streaks and cold streaks. And every time he has a hot streak, people are like, oh, see, he's flashing. We just got to get this or that. At this point in Trevor's career, he's been in the league too long to think he's just going to magically turn into Josh Allen, right? And I think people are still waiting for him to become Josh Allen. Or, sometimes because a player like Trevor gets all this hype but gets drafted to a place like Jacksonville, people blame Jacksonville. But the truth is, Joe Burrow got a similar amount of hype, less hype than Trevor Lawrence, but still was a unanimous number one overall selection, a no-brainer number one overall selection. And the Bengals weren't at a great place when they got Joe Burrow, obviously. At the number one overall pick, they were a bit of a mess. Their owner's cheap. All that stuff hasn't mattered, right? Zach Taylor is consistently recognized as one of the worst coaches in football, and still Joe Burrow drags that man across the finish line and has almost dragged that man to a Super Bowl championship. That is what a quarterback who is worth the number one overall hype does. Trevor Lawrence has never done that. I think that makes him severely overrated. The fact that people still aren't willing to just accept what it is for Trevor Lawrence is also something that I find odd. And I wonder what Trevor Lawrence's life is going to be if he goes to a different team. Like, I feel like he needs to do the Jared Goff. He needs to get traded somewhere else so that the expectations on him reset a little bit. And so people can just accept that Trevor Lawrence is what Trevor Lawrence is and just let him do what he's good at and stop trying to hope that he turns into Andrew Luck. If you let Trevor Lawrence run, be physical, get downfield that way, throw some deep balls, I think Trevor Lawrence can be a very fun quarterback for you. But if you're obsessed with this idea that Trevor Lawrence is going to become Josh Allen, he's just not Josh Allen. And he's not going to be Josh Allen anytime soon. If he was Josh Allen, we wouldn't be having these damn debates about Trevor Lawrence, right? We would be calling him Josh Allen. Is he better than Josh Allen, right? But that's not where we're at. I think a lot of people just don't want to be wrong about that generational tag that they put on Trevor Lawrence. And sometimes even generational prospects underwhelm. And with Trevor Lawrence, he's underwhelmed. And that speaks to the level of prospect that he was coming out of college, because not a lot of guys can underwhelm and be the 15th best quarterback in football. That's where Trevor Lawrence sits, right? He's like the 15th, 16th best quarterback in football, and his career has been underwhelming. That speaks to how high the expectations were for him and how high his potential was coming out of college. But he hasn't realized it. It doesn't seem like he's going to realize it at any point soon. And now he kind of just is what he is. So I'd agree with you. I don't think he's the most overrated quarterback in the last decade. I don't know who I would give that distinction to, but I just don't watch Trevor Lawrence and think he's overrated, in my opinion, because I think a lot of people are where I'm at with Trevor, where they just think he's inconsistent, right? The normal conversation about Trevor isn't how great he is. It's about how Trevor has not really lived up to that draft type and when we're going to start noticing it. So I would say maybe if you want to talk about him as a prospect, he was overrated, but I don't know if he was that overrated as a prospect. Slightly overrated for sure, but I don't know if he was that overrated. I think the most overrated quarterback in the last decade to me is definitely like Jimmy Garoppolo. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is probably the most overrated quarterback in the last decade. I think I can comfortably say that. Yeah, Jimmy Garoppolo and then maybe Carson Wentz. Maybe Carson Wentz. But yeah, those two. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.